It was 3:47 in the morning and I was sitting alone in a hospital stairwell because I couldn't stop crying in front of the nurses anymore. I had my back against the cold concrete wall, my knees pulled up to my chest and my phone in my hand. My sister had just given birth 6 weeks earlier, her daughter. This tiny, perfect, terrifying little girl was in the Nicu on the 4th floor connected to monitors I didn't fully understand, and my sister's husband Marcus was upstairs holding her hand while I had slipped out to fall apart somewhere no one could see me. I wasn't even the one going through it, but I was the only family member there. My name is Claire. I'm 29. I work in HR at a mid-size logistics company in Columbus, Ohio. I am not someone who posts about my personal life. I am not someone who makes scenes or sends long dramatic texts or cuts people off without thinking it through for months first. I say this because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound extreme, and I want you to understand it was the opposite of extreme. It was the most measured, deliberate thing I've ever done in my life. My sister's name is Dana. She's 32, a physical therapist. The kind of person who brings homemade soup when you're sick and remembers every single person's birthday without putting it in her phone. She is the best person I know. When she called me at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday to tell me her water had broken and she was scared and it was too early, I was in my car within 4 minutes. Marcus had already called her parents, my parents, his parents, both sets of grandparents to be about to meet a baby who wasn't supposed to arrive for another 6 weeks. And then we waited. Dana had asked Marcus to send a message to the family group chat, not just our immediate family, the extended one. Aunts, uncles, cousins, my grandmother on my dad's side who still used a flip phone but somehow managed to be in the chat anyway. The message was simple. Dana's water broke. Baby is coming early. We're at Riverside. Please pray for them. I watched the message go out from where I was sitting in the waiting room. I watched the little check marks appear. Read receipts one after another. My aunt, my dad's older sister Patricia, replied first. She sent a string of heart emojis and then I kid you not a photo of herself at what appeared to be a work dinner holding up a glass of wine toward the camera like a toast for a baby in distress. My uncle wrote back, prayers up. Keep us posted. My grandmother sent, calling church prayer chain now. My mom, who lives 40 minutes away, wrote, oh my goodness, we'll be there first thing in the morning. First thing in the morning. Dana's daughter was born at 2 a.m. She weighed 4 pounds and 11 ounces. She had all her fingers and all her toes and a full head of dark hair and lungs that were working but working hard. The NICU team was calm and efficient and kind. They told us she was stable. They told us she needed time. I held it together long enough to see Dana through recovery. I held it together when Marcus cried in the hallway and I held him and told him she was a fighter. I held it together right up until I was alone in that stairwell and then I didn't anymore. I texted my mom, are you coming today? She replied 3 hours later, we were up so late worrying. Dad's back is acting up. We'll try for tomorrow. Tomorrow became the day after. The day after became the end of the week. The end of the week became will come when she's a little stronger. We don't want to overwhelm the NICU. My parents live 40 minutes away. Marcus's parents were worse. They lived an hour and a half out and made it exactly once in the first 3 weeks. A 45-minute visit during which his mother cried so much that Dana spent the whole time comforting her instead of the other way around. Dana never complained. That was the thing that broke my heart. She would give me these small, careful updates every time I visited, and I visited every single day after work, sometimes twice on weekends, and she would say things like, Mom said she'd been dealing with her knee. Or Marcus's dad has been really stressed with the business. And she'd say it in this flat, accepting voice like she had already processed it and filed it away and made peace with it. I hadn't made peace with it. I kept sending updates to the group chat because Dana had asked me to. Her daughter, they named her Violet, had good days and hard days. There were breathing scares. There were weight checks. There were tiny victories like the first time Violet held Dana's finger that deserved to be shared with people who loved them. My updates got likes, heart reacts, occasional one-line replies. So glad she's doing better. You're all in our prayers. Strong baby. Nobody came. 3 weeks in, I posted a photo Dana had taken of Violet's hand wrapped around her own finger. The caption was just, "She held on." Day 21. 47 reactions. 17 comments. 3 people asked if they could share it. My Aunt Patricia commented, "Precious angel. Tell Dana we're all thinking of her constantly." I stared at that comment for a long time. Constantly. They were thinking of her constantly from wherever they were doing whatever they were doing in their regular lives that had not been interrupted at all. I put my phone down and went back to the Nicu and sat with Dana, and we watched Violet sleep, and I didn't say anything about the comment because what was there to say? It was at the end of the 4th week that things shifted. I had stopped by after work on a Wednesday and Dana was quieter than usual. Not sad quiet. Thinking quiet. When Marcus stepped out to get coffee, she looked at me and said, "Has anyone said anything to you about why they're not coming?" I told her no, but everyone just seemed busy or tired or waiting for a better time. She nodded slowly. Then she said, "Patricia called Marcus yesterday." I waited. She told him she'd heard I was really struggling emotionally, that I was having a hard time bonding with Violet and I'd been saying some dark things and the doctors were worried. She paused. She said she didn't want to overwhelm me by visiting until I was more stable. I felt something go very cold in my chest. "Dana," I said carefully, "has any doctor said anything remotely like that to you?" She looked at me. "No. I'm doing really well actually. The therapist they have on staff here said I'm coping remarkably well given everything." "Does Marcus know it's not true?" "He knows. He told her that." She said she must have gotten confused. Dana's voice was completely even. "But Claire, if she told Marcus she probably told everyone." I drove home that night replaying the conversation the entire way. Patricia lived 20 minutes from my parents. She had lunch with my mom at least twice a month. She was in a book club with Marcus's mother. She was, as far as I could tell, the social hub of the entire extended family, the one everyone called to catch up, the one who forwarded news and organized gatherings and generally served as the central relay station for information. If Patricia had told Marcus she had told everyone, and she had told them a story that made it not just acceptable but actually thoughtful and considerate to stay away. I need you to understand the precision of this. It wasn't just a lie. It was a perfectly calibrated lie. It gave everyone an excuse that felt like kindness. We're not coming because we care too much to overwhelm her. We're staying away because we're being respectful of her mental state. It reframed their absence as an act of love. I sat in my car in my apartment parking lot for 20 minutes before I went inside. Then I called my cousin Derek. Derek is a year older than me, Patricia's son, and the one member of that side of the family I have always trusted completely. He's a high school history teacher, meticulous and fair, exactly the kind of person who needs to actually understand something before he forms an opinion about it. I told him everything Dana had told me. I told him about the weeks of updates with no visits. I told him about the lie. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "She told my dad Dana was put on medication for postpartum psychosis." I closed my eyes. She said the hospital had restricted visitors on the recommendation of Dana's psychiatric team, he said. That's why no one came. Mom said it wasn't our place to push. There it was. Not just she struggling emotionally, full psychiatric hold, doctor's orders, a clinical barrier that didn't exist. I asked Derek how sure he was. He said, "I'm going to find out." What Derek did next is important because I want to be clear he didn't just take my word for it. He's not that kind of person, and honestly that's why I called him. He called Marcus directly and asked him plainly and without accusation to walk him through exactly what the medical situation had been since Violet was born. Marcus, who had no idea any of this was happening, spent 40 minutes on the phone with him going through everything. The actual diagnoses, the actual treatment, the actual visitor policy, which was standard Nicu protocol and had never once restricted family. Then Derek called the family. Not a group chat message. Phone calls. Individual ones to each household explaining what he found out, explaining what had been said and what the truth was. He told me later that most of them were shocked. A few were defensive at first and then ashamed. His own father, my uncle, had apparently gone very quiet and then said, "I should have called the hospital myself." I should have just called. Yes, he should have. My Aunt Patricia found out that Derek had made those calls before he got to her. By the time he reached her, she'd had about an hour to think about it. She told him she didn't know where the confusion had come from, that she must have misunderstood something someone said, that she had only been trying to protect Dana's privacy, and if she'd gotten it wrong, she was sorry, but her intentions had been good. Derek told her very calmly that her intentions didn't change what had happened, that for 4 weeks Dana had been in a hospital with her premature daughter and no family support because of something Patricia had said, that whatever the intention was, the effect was that Dana had been alone. Patricia said, "I'd like to call Dana and explain." Derek said he thought that was up to Dana. He called me after and told me everything. I sat on my couch and listened and felt this strange combination of vindication and exhaustion and grief, not anger exactly or not only anger, mostly just this deep, tired sadness that it had happened at all. I talked to Dana the next morning. I told her what Derek had found. I told her what Patricia had said to people in detail, so she could hear it from me before anyone else called her. She didn't cry. She did this thing she does when something really hurts, where she goes very still and looks at a point slightly past her shoulder. Then she said, "I want to talk to her. Can you be there when I do?" I said, "Of course." We did it over video call, 3 days later, in Dana's hospital room. Violet was having a good day. The doctors had reduced one of her monitors, and she gained almost 4 ounces that week. Dana had Violet in her arms, doing skin-to-skin, when Patricia's face appeared on the screen. Patricia looked like she'd been preparing for this. She had her apologetic face on. She started with, "I just want you to know how much I love you both," and moved into something that was structured like an apology, but had a lot of words in it about miscommunication and good intentions, and how worried she had been. Dana let her finish. Then she moved Violet slightly in her arms, just enough that the camera could see her clearly, and she said, "I want you to look at her." Patricia looked. "She's 5 weeks old today," Dana said. "She came into 6 weeks early, and she's been fighting every single day. And for the first 4 of those weeks, I sat in this room by myself while Claire drove here after work, and Marcus came during his lunch break, and everyone else stayed home because you told them I was too unstable to have visitors." Patricia started to say something. "I'm not done," Dana said. "Not loud, not mean, just clear. I needed my family. That's all. I needed people to show up the way you show up for someone when life is breaking them. And instead I got heart reacts on a group chat." She looked directly at the camera. "I know you're sorry, but I need you to actually understand what you took from me. Not a miscommunication. 5 weeks." Patricia was crying by the end. She apologized again, and this time it sounded more like a real apology, less curated, more broken. She said she didn't know why she had done it. She said she thought, and this part was hard to follow, that somehow the early birth was connected to stress in Dana's life, and she hadn't wanted that to be talked about, and so I don't fully understand the logic, and I'm not sure she does, either. Dana told her she needed time before she would be ready to have any kind of normal relationship with her. She told her she hoped that could happen eventually, but she couldn't promise anything right now. She told her she did not want her to come to the hospital. Patricia said she understood. She said she would wait. After we ended the call, Dana looked at me and said, "Okay." Just that. Okay. I stayed for another hour. We sat together and watched Violet sleep, and talked about nothing important. What show Dana had been watching on her tablet, whether the cafeteria's tomato soup was actually decent or just seemed good because everything tasted better when you were exhausted. Normal things. Small things. 2 days after the call, a flower delivery arrived at the hospital from Patricia. A large, expensive arrangement with a card that said, "Violet is lucky to have such a strong mama. We love you both." Dana asked the nurse to put it at the front desk for other families to enjoy. She didn't keep it. Then Patricia's husband, my Uncle Gerald, called Marcus to let him know that Patricia wanted to set up a college fund for Violet. "A gesture of support," he said. He mentioned a specific amount. It was a large amount. Marcus told him he'd talk to Dana. Dana called me that night. I could tell from her voice that she was tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. She said, "She wants to give Violet money." I said, "I heard. It would actually help," she said. And I knew that was true. Nicu stays are expensive. Marcus had used up his PTO. Dana wasn't going back to work for months. The money would genuinely, materially help. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "But every time I look at Violet's college fund, I'll think about the 5 weeks I sat here by myself." I didn't tell her what to do. I just said, "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." She turned it down. She called Gerald herself and said, "Thank you, but no." She said she and Marcus were going to handle it. She said she appreciated the offer, but she needed to draw her own boundary around what she was willing to accept from Patricia right now, and accepting a large financial gift didn't feel right. He said he understood. He sounded relieved, honestly, like the call had been uncomfortable for him, too. Violet came home on a Thursday afternoon, 38 days after she was born. She weighed 6 pounds and 2 ounces. She was not on any monitors. She was wearing a yellow onesie that was still a little too big for her, and she screamed the entire car ride home in a way that the pediatrician had promised them was completely healthy and normal, and a very good sign. I was there when they walked through the door. My parents were there, too. They had driven over that morning, unprompted, the first time they'd made the trip, and they'd cleaned Dana's house and stocked her fridge, and my mom had made 2 casseroles and put them in the freezer. It wasn't enough. It was too late. But it was something, and when Dana walked in and saw it, she cried. And my mom held her and cried, too. And my dad stood in the kitchen looking like a man who was understanding something he wished he had understood sooner. We didn't talk about Patricia that day. There was nothing to say about her that the day needed. Marcus's parents came the following weekend. They stayed for 3 hours and held Violet. And were genuinely, beautifully helpful. Marcus's mom washed every dish in the house, and his dad fixed a cabinet door that had been sticking for months. Small things. Present things. Derek came by with his wife and brought dinner and spent most of the visit just sitting near Dana and making her laugh, which she needed more than anyone knew. It's been a few months now. Violet is doing incredibly well. She has rolls on her thighs and opinions about which songs get played during her bath, and she makes a specific face when she's about to sneeze that is genuinely the funniest thing I've ever seen. Dana has not seen Patricia since the video call. Patricia sends cards, birthday cards, holiday cards, a card with a photo of flowers when Violet hit her 2-month milestone. Dana reads them and puts them away. She's not ready. Maybe someday she will be. She's not putting a timeline on it. What I keep coming back to is this. At 3:47 in the morning, sitting in a hospital stairwell, I texted my mom and asked if she was coming, and she said they'd try for tomorrow. Tomorrow. For a baby who had arrived early and afraid into a world that was bigger than she was ready for. For a sister who was doing everything right and doing it alone. I don't know what Patricia told herself she was doing. I don't know if she wanted people to stay away, or she just didn't think through what would happen when they did. Or if somewhere in the logic of it she believed she was protecting something. What I know is that the story she told made everyone feel okay about not showing up, and that is its own kind of answer. What I know is that Dana deserved better. What I know is that Derek made phone calls when he could have sent a text, and that made all the difference. What I know is that Violet is home and healthy, and does not know any of this happened. And by the time she's old enough to understand anything, I hope the story has become smaller than it feels right now. And what I know is that when your person is in the hardest stretch of their life, you figure out how to show up. You don't wait for a better time. You don't wait until they're more stable or the situation is less inconvenient, or the drive feels more reasonable. You show up. That's all. You just show up. Had you ever been the only one who showed up? Or the person who needed someone, too? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one.